I stepped down and opened the door, just before the inspectors could even knock. Silas, a middle-aged man, looked at me and said plainly, "We've received complaints about several irregularities in this house's structure. We need to check everything." They took nearly 90 minutes to inspect it all. When they were done, Eli walked over and said, "We didn't find any issues like the ones in the complaint. This house meets every regulation." Karen marched toward me quickly. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "This is just a safety precaution." I rolled my eyes. A safety precaution? Hardly, when the inspectors say my house has no problems. I grabbed my phone and called the inspection office to file an official complaint. When Karen realized this could turn into a bigger mess, she finally backed off. "I'm not done with you yet," she muttered under her breath before storming away. But this time she was wrong. It was over for her. My name's Wyatt Delgado. I'm 42 years old, born in a small town on the western plains of America. Right now, I'm the sheriff of Silver Oak Ridge, a quiet suburban neighborhood I chose to call home after years of tackling high-stress cases. I take pride in my work, always putting justice first, and I never let anyone threaten my freedom. But no one warned me that living here would mean facing off with a bunch of arrogant self-proclaimed HOA police, who make me want to scream in frustration. Leave a comment with the number 9, so I know you're ready to dive into my story. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, so you won't miss any of the tense twists waiting ahead. It all started on a Friday morning. A group showed up at my front door, loudly accusing me of breaking community rules. With their cheap fake badges and smug attitudes, they had the nerve to threaten to arrest me. Right there in my own front yard. What made me grind my teeth in anger? I'm the real sheriff of this area, and now, these clowns were about to find out they'd picked the wrong guy to mess with. I've always known the Homeowners Association, or HOA, in Silver Oak Ridge was just a pack of bored busybodies, crowning themselves as unacknowledged rulers. They act like they can control everything, judging and punishing anyone who doesn't follow their bizarre, made-up rules. In the past, they've hassled me over my fence being 12 centimeters too tall, the gray color of my front door, even parking my truck 30 centimeters from the curb. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened that morning. I was sipping my coffee in peace when I caught sight of 6 figures through the window glass. They stood on the path leading to my house, wearing bright orange polo shirts, sunglasses, and an air of authority they must have bought at a discount store. One guy clutched a thick notebook. A woman had a plastic radio clipped to her waist. And standing out most was the woman in the middle, Karen. With her short, fiery orange dyed hair, she crossed her arms, her face scrunched up like something had just annoyed her. Karen was clearly the ringleader, like a commander steering her useless minions. I took a deep breath to swallow my irritation, finished my last sip of coffee, and walked over to open the door. Before I could even get it fully open, Karen spoke up, her voice brimming with confidence, like she was delivering a press conference. "You've seriously violated HOA regulations, and we're here to deal with it immediately." I stared right at her. A mix of skepticism and annoyance made me want to laugh out loud. What was this? What did she want? Before I could say a word, Karen pulled out a homemade plastic card and held it up in front of me. "We're investigating you for a string of violations. Repainting your garage without permission, keeping an unregistered vehicle in your yard, and, most importantly," she paused, stressing each word, "behavior unfit for this community's residents." I had to fight hard not to laugh right there. My garage hasn't been repainted in the 7 years I've lived here. The unregistered vehicle, she meant, was my perfectly legal pickup, parked neatly in my yard. And unfit behavior? She just meant I didn't go to their pointless HOA meetings. But what stunned me most was her next line. "Since you've repeatedly ignored prior warnings, the HOA is enforcing its civilian oversight rights. We'll detain you until this is resolved. House arrest." I blinked a few times, trying to process what she just said. "Did you just say you're going to detain me?" Karen puffed out her chest, confident like she was about to win an award. "The HOA has full authority over Silver Oak Ridge." The other 5 nodded in unison, like a bunch of pre-programmed robots. That's when I realized their absurdity had crossed every line I could tolerate. They genuinely thought they could arrest someone. They had no idea that I, Wyatt Delgado, am the sheriff. Not some store security guard, not a neighborhood volunteer, but a real law enforcement officer with a badge, a gun, and patience wearing thinner by the second thanks to this circus. I kept my cool, deciding to play along a bit, see how far they'd take it. Interesting, I said, pretending to think it over. So, how exactly are you planning to arrest me? Karen pointed at one of her lackeys, a guy with a round belly, stuffed into a shirt so tight it looked painted on. He dug into his pocket and pulled out a pair of white plastic handcuffs. Plastic? I asked, not bothering to hide the doubt in my voice. We have our own methods, he replied, trying to sound tough even though his voice cracked a little. It was a full-blown farce unfolding right at my doorstep. I took a deep breath to stay calm, stepped back, and quickly pulled my wallet from my pocket. I flipped it open, flashing my gleaming sheriff's badge. The smug grin on Karen's face vanished instantly, like someone had just snatched her joy away. Pretty fascinating that you folks think you can just arrest someone, I said, my voice as stern as I could make it. But right now, you're the ones breaking the law. Everything from impersonating officials to conspiring to restrict someone's freedom. Silence dropped over us like a heavy blanket. Karen's eyes widened. Her lackeys exchanged nervous glances, and for the first time, they realized they'd tangled with the wrong person. What are you getting at? Karen stammered, her confidence crumbling fast. I crossed my arms over my chest. I'm saying that if you don't leave my property in the next 8 seconds, I'll arrest you for real. Dead quiet. Sweat started rolling down the forehead of the round-bellied guy. Karen's hand trembled slightly, still clutching that flimsy homemade plastic card. Then, like a pack of panicked amateurs fleeing trouble, they began to back off, muttering excuses no one could quite make out. This isn't over, Karen yelled as she spun around, dragging her humiliated crew away with her. I stood there, watching them go, a mix of amusement and disbelief swirling in my head. What in the world just happened? Deep down, though, I knew this wasn't the end. If I thought that ridiculous arrest attempt was the final chapter, I was dead wrong. I've dealt with stubborn people before, but Karen and her minions turned stubbornness into some kind of bizarre art form. Normal folks would know when to quit and move on. Not her. She didn't just refuse to back down. She decided to double down on her revenge. Her first move came Saturday morning. I stepped outside to take out the trash, only to find all 3 of my bins completely gone. Not a trace left on the driveway or near the house. I glanced around, and sure enough, there was Karen, standing across the street, arms crossed, smirking at me like she was the supreme ruler of this place. When our eyes met, she deliberately flashed a smug little smile before strolling back into her house. I took a long breath to tamp down my anger, trying to ignore her. But when I checked my mailbox, I found an envelope stamped with the HOA logo. I opened it, already bracing for something bad, and I wasn't disappointed. Inside was a list of penalties for failing to meet community standards. Among them, I was banned from using trash services, prohibited from parking in my own garage, and required to attend a mandatory meeting to discuss my improper behavior. I held the paper, tore it in half right then and there, and let the pieces flutter to the ground. If Karen wanted to drive me up the wall, she'd have to try harder than that. But of course, she had more tricks up her sleeve. That afternoon, I ran out to handle some errands. When I got back, I found a yellow traffic cone smack in the middle of my garage entrance. Next to it, a plastic sheet taped to a piece of wood declared my garage, sealed by HOA order. Unbelievable. Who has the guts to ban someone from using their own garage? I marched over, ripped the paper off, and tossed the cone across the street without a second thought. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted 2 of Karen's cronies watching from a distance. One of them, let's call him Miles in my head, was scribbling in his notebook, probably jotting down something like, homeowner vandalizing HOA property, or some other nonsense. Did they really think they were legit inspectors? Less than 3 minutes later, Karen showed up. You're not allowed to take that down, she barked. I looked at her, still holding the cone like it was Exhibit A. Not allowed? In my own house. She jabbed a finger at the plastic sheet, her face turning red with fury. That's an HOA penalty order. You can't just ignore our rules. I took a deep breath to keep from laughing. Karen, you don't have the authority to seal my garage. Fact is, you don't have any authority except to annoy me. She glared, clearly unwilling to back down. But before she could fire back, I turned, walked inside, and slammed the door shut. Still, I knew this wasn't over. Sunday morning, while I was at the sheriff's station, I got a call from one of the few neighbors not sucked into this insane HOA mess. His name's Jonas. He sounded worried. Wyatt, there are cops at your house. I stopped what I was doing cold. 3 cars. They said they got a report about a suspicious armed man in your home. Karen, that cunning little schemer, had deliberately sent people to dig up my entire yard over a leak that didn't even exist. I took a deep breath, trying not to let something reckless slip out. Listen, I said. There's no leak here. You and the HOA have no right to touch a thing. Pack up your stuff and leave now. Raoul hesitated, glancing at his crew like he was looking for backup. Sir, the thing is, we're already here. And now you're going to leave. I cut him off. He started to argue, but I held up my sheriff's badge. The reaction was instant. Raoul's eyes widened, he swallowed hard, then turned to his team. All right, folks, we're wrapping up for today. The workers started gathering their tools, and Karen charged toward me, her footsteps pounding like she couldn't hold herself back. You can't do this. I raised an eyebrow. Do what? Stop them from wrecking my yard for no reason. The HOA has the right to manage this neighborhood's infrastructure, and I have the right to arrest you for trespassing and fraud. Her mouth opened and shut a few times, like she didn't know what to say. For the first time, she was truly speechless. But don't you worry, Karen snapped back, regaining her footing fast. You're disrespecting the community. A good neighbor doesn't act like this. I took a step closer, lowering my voice just enough to let her feel the weight. And you're sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Karen didn't reply. She threw her hands up in the air, let out a frustrated huff, and stormed back to her house, her steps heavy, like a kid who'd just been scolded. But I knew she wasn't done yet. The eviction plot. On Tuesday the next week, I got a letter from the HOA. It said my house was under review for disciplinary action due to behavior negatively impacting community welfare. In fancy terms, they wanted to kick me out of my own home. That's right, this unhinged woman wanted me gone. According to the letter, I'd broken multiple serious rules and openly defied the HOA's authority. Because of that, my presence was no longer welcome, and they were taking steps to revoke my residency in Silver Oak Ridge. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. The HOA didn't have the slightest power to do that. They don't own my house, they don't control my bank loan, and they can't just decide I don't get to live here. But Karen clearly thought they could. What's worse, some neighbors started giving me cold looks, obviously swayed by her smear campaign. In just 48 hours, I'd somehow become the neighborhood's #1 troublemaker, the rebel daring to challenge the HOA's sacred order. It got so ridiculous that when I went to the grocery store on Wednesday, a neighbor I rarely talked to, Lila, came up to me. With a mix of curiosity and judgment, she said, "You know, some people think you don't fit in here. Maybe you should think about moving." I gave her a tight smile. Some people should mind their own business more. Her face turned red, and she slipped away quietly. The humiliating meeting, the disciplinary hearing, was set for Thursday evening. I showed up just to watch Karen crash and burn in person. The community room was packed. Neighbors lined up in neat rows of folding chairs, like it was some kind of courtroom. Karen stood at the front with a towering stack of papers, clearly ready to publicly take me down. She cleared her throat and started speaking, her tone like a kindergarten teacher laying out the rules. We're gathered here today to address the disruptive behavior of someone who refuses to cooperate with our community. I rolled my eyes. Cut it out, Karen. You want to kick me out of this neighborhood, don't you? She tried to hide it, but her intent was crystal clear. Well, with all the violations you've committed. I leaned forward. What violations? Faking an arrest? Harassing the police? Digging up my yard without permission? Her face turned red, but she pressed on. What I mean is, I raised a hand to stop her. What you mean is the HOA has no power to kick anyone out of here. This isn't a gated community, Karen. You're not the sheriff, and this meeting? It's meaningless. The room went dead silent. A few neighbors glanced at each other, like they were just realizing this for the first time. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it, forcing a weak smile as if nothing was wrong. That's ridiculous. You don't belong in this community. I crossed my arms. Yeah, I'll keep not belonging, because I'm not going anywhere. She stared at me, fury boiling over, but she knew she'd lost. Still, Karen's not the type to accept defeat easily, and I was sure she had one last trick up her sleeve. I'd seen Karen try to arrest me, dig up my yard, smear my name, and even push to get me thrown out of her precious neighborhood. Every time I thought she'd hit the peak of absurdity, she found a way to go further. After that humiliating HOA meeting, I knew this woman would pull out all the stops, and she did. This time, it wasn't some silly letter, traffic cones, or fake reports. Karen decided to go big. On Friday morning after the meeting, I was jolted awake by blaring sirens outside. I looked out the window and saw 3 county enforcement vehicles parked in my front yard. And, of course, across the street stood Karen, pretending to just casually watch, but that smug grin of hers gave her away. She'd called the authorities again. I stepped downstairs and opened the door before the inspectors could even knock. One of them, a middle-aged guy with Silas on his name tag, looked at me with an awkward professional air and got straight to it. Sir, we've received complaints about several structural irregularities with this house. We need to inspect everything. I frowned. What irregularities? According to the report, this house has unpermitted construction, substandard plumbing, and signs of pest infestation. I almost laughed out loud. Karen wasn't just trying to annoy me anymore. She wanted the authorities to force me out. I leaned against the doorframe, eyeing Silas. And who filed this complaint? He hesitated for a second before answering. It was officially submitted by the HOA. Of course it was the HOA, and of course Karen was behind it. Fine, come on in, I said, swinging the door wide and gesturing them inside. Go ahead and check. Silas looked surprised, probably expecting me to argue, but I stayed calm because I hadn't done anything wrong. Unlike Karen, my house was fully up to code. They spent nearly 90 minutes going over everything, measuring walls, checking pipes, rummaging through cabinets, taking pictures. Meanwhile, Karen and her minions hovered outside, waiting for the moment I'd be condemned. When they were done, a younger inspector named Eli walked up to me. Sir, we've gone through it all, and we didn't find any issues like the ones in the complaint. This house meets every county regulation. I tried to hold back a laugh, but I couldn't. So, the complaint was completely made up? Eli scratched his head, obviously uneasy. Well, basically, yeah. I smiled, crossing my arms. Good to know, because I'll be filing an official CO. Karen started to panic. She rushed toward me before the inspectors could even leave. You're blowing this out of proportion, she snapped. It's just a safety precaution. I rolled my eyes. A safety precaution? Hardly, when the inspectors say there's nothing wrong with my house. So, either you made it up, or you don't even know what to check for. She clenched her teeth, turning to Silas and Eli like she hoped they'd back her up. But both just shrugged, clearly not wanting to get tangled in this nonsense. Karen tried to argue more, but I was already on my phone, calling the inspection office to formally file a complaint against her. When she realized this could spiral into real trouble, she finally backed off. I'm not done with you yet, she muttered under her breath as she stomped away, her steps heavy. But this time she was wrong. It was over for her. Over the next 4 days, things got worse for Karen. The complaint I filed about the HOA was taken seriously, especially since it wasn't the first time they'd gotten flack for their overbearing behavior. An investigation kicked off, and a flood of issues came to light. They found Karen had been fining residents without cause, collecting money for important HOA events that were really just parties for her and her buddies. She'd hired shady contractors for common area maintenance and pocketed some of the cash. The kicker? She wasn't even allowed to be HOA president. Per the rules, the position had to be re-elected every 2 years, but she'd never held a vote. She'd clung to power just because no one had the patience to challenge her. Until now. A special meeting was called on Saturday night to decide the HOA's future. Karen showed up, trying to justify herself, but it was all out of her hands. Most of the residents were furious at being duped. Even her former supporters turned on her, realizing they'd been used. The final blow came when a county auditor named Nora was brought in to review the HOA's finances. Nora announced that more than $18,000 had vanished. That was the nail in Karen's coffin. The HOA board voted unanimously to remove her on the spot. Karen still tried to argue, threatening to sue everyone, but no one cared anymore. In the end, the police were called. She tried to slip out, but 3 officers stopped her right at the door. As real handcuffs clicked onto her wrists, a resident named Thomas shouted, "Way to go, Karen!" The self-proclaimed ruler of the neighborhood was hauled off like the lawbreaker she was. After Karen vanished from Silver Oak Ridge, the HOA got a complete overhaul. Rules were relaxed, absurd fines were scrapped, and the new board promised no one would ever control the residents like that again. The funniest part? 6 weeks later, I heard Karen tried to appeal in court and failed miserably. She had to sell her house and leave town. Word is she moved somewhere no one knows her, probably to start her power trip all over again in a new neighborhood. But here, peace returned, and honestly, I've never been happier to see a for sale sign pop up on that street. So what do you think of this story? Wyatt Delgado's battle with Karen and the HOA shines a light on something very real in today's society. The clash between individual rights and community rules that sometimes get pushed too far. From petty disputes over door paint or parking spots, we see how some people abuse self-appointed authority to control others, a trend that's not uncommon in modern neighborhoods. The positive takeaway: patience, composure, and using legitimate power wisely can tackle unfair situations effectively, just like Wyatt did to protect himself and turn the tables. That said, please note this story is purely for entertainment and education. It's not meant to stereotype, criticize, or smear any person or group. I hope you enjoyed it. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can dive into more life lessons together. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this video. Wishing you a peaceful day, and I'll see you in the next one.